Heather, do you have a camera of the room?
Is it not on? Uh-oh. Okay, hang on, it's why. Here we go. Am I? Wait. There we go. Good?
Yeah, that's really good. Thanks.
All righty, we will call today's meeting of the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee to order. First up is additions to the agenda. If any changes or just for additions to the agenda? Beth?
Just, I wouldn't mind discussing at some point, when we're doing the minutes, whether we can add the people's names, how they voted, if it isn't, if it isn't,
Unanimous.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to add that to the agenda under action items or discussion items?
Wherever it fits in.
Well, if you want to vote on it, it needs to be in the action items, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll add that as 3.6. I guess we need to vote on that because it wasn't discussed in advance, so. Okay, there's a motion to add recording of votes to the minutes. Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor of adding that to the agenda? Opposed? Okay, that will be added as 3.6. Okay, any other changes? Right, with no changes, I'd need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll move to adopt it.
Thank you. All those in favor? Okay, today's agenda is adopted. That brings us to adoption of meeting minutes. Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee meeting minutes from June 8th, 2022.
Didn't receive any changes from anyone, but I did notice one thing. Hans was not here, so I think Doug wrote Hans instead of Jan, so I will make that one change. Yeah, but I did have to double think on that. I was like, was Hans here? I don't, yeah, so, okay. I'll make that change and we'll call it good.
Okay, any other changes?
I apologize for all you vowel sounding names over there.
Right, I'll let the record reflect that Doug
Sorry.
is sorry. Okay, need a motion to adopt the meeting minutes for June 8th.
Make a motion to adopt the meeting minutes from June 8th, please.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favor? Okay, meeting minutes are adopted. All the way up to action items already. 3.1 maintenance update. That's yours, Chad.
Okay, yeah, the parks crew is busy. I'd love to give everyone here a copy. This was on the town website. So if you want to go there, this is taken right off there. The work they've done. Enough? Yeah. So they built right off of the G section, they built it a new 113-foot section of boardwalk. It's an area that we've been having issues with for numerous years. It's kind of really muddy there all the time. I think there's a spring or something in there, but I mean, we put gravel down, years and years, and it just kind of disappears. So we decided let's put in this new boardwalk. So that's complete. They stabilized and leveled the section of boardwalk from the cemetery to the bike park, and they're going to be working on that down, what is that, QP loop next. So that is what has been done. Oh, the lumber was around $4,000 to do that section. I think that's what it is. This, yeah, that's right on the website. Sorry, Doug,
I just sent him a link.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, thanks, Chad. Any comments or questions about the maintenance update? Alice?
Yeah, Beth and I went out there today, and I was just wondering, I'm not, did Fine Line fall short of finishing that section?
No,
Or
they would
they
never
went all
do
the way?
that. They were never to do that section.
No, I'm, but beyond it, right? If you
Yeah.
walk along there after 50 meters or so,
Yeah.
you're into what line?
They did H. Yeah. And they never, that's all, so they were supposed to do E, H. They didn't do E. So instead, they did that.
This way. They go in a little bit farther east of
Okay.
H, but not the section you're
Yeah.
talking about.
So
Yeah.
there's still a
Yeah.
100 or so meters of G left to,
That's what Chad did.
That's what we did.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
That's brand new, just
that's due now.
last
Okay.
couple weeks.
Yeah, because he was supposed to just do H, but he went east a bit farther,
okay.
and then Chad picked that up and gone further east.
So does that mean that G, H and G are now completed? Is that what I understand?
I would assume.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Question.
Sure.
The upstream loop in yellow, what are you planning to do there?
Just any straightening, leveling, that's kind of where we're gonna be working in the next little while.
Yeah.
I think that's, and we're gonna take out that tree. Are you? Yes.
Okay.
You don't want us to? It's kind of been going down and down. It is,
Yeah.
soon enough, it's gonna come down.
If we had money and time and we wanted some fun, it would be nice if we could somehow prop it up,
Yeah,
just to keep it up,
Yeah.
because it is kind of.
Cool.
yeah, it is.
Laws of physics,
Yeah. Sorry.
but it is a widowmaker in the making.
Oh, yeah, we know it's gonna be a mess in there once we do. I don't like, once we get it to the ground, it's gonna stay there.
Yeah.
But it's gonna fall on the boardwalk.
Okay.
So whatever repairs we need to do after it falls, I think, we talked about removing chunks, but we're like, yeah. So we're gonna kind of try and drop it and minimize the damage to the, it's right on that intersection there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try and minimize that damage and then
Yeah.
repair anything that happens.
Fix it up, yeah.
That's the plan. And then straightening, leveling, that kind of section.
Just keeping sections on.
Yeah, that's kind of how I wanted to do, is just have that work.
Well, and from past history, I guess that's probably better than the proactive, better than
Yeah,
reactive.
yeah. I got a question. Any lessons learned from, or any takeaways from that added section? The added section?
Cool things that you checked out. Those first sections just like that, those, I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah, those are
so
really neat.
I did find out like an alternative option. It's called Trail Grid. I don't know. Jay Hoots uses it a lot. And it's basically, instead of actually using Boardwalk, it's 4 sections. Would have been good there. And I found out after we kind of had half of this done already, that this product exists, but it's just like a snap together grid and you lay gravel down on it. It's like made from plastic, like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? And then you put it down and then water actually flows through, the gravel doesn't move, kind of, you can drive equipment on it.
Yeah, they use it a lot on big market.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'd probably preserve the gravel rather than just sinking.
Yeah, exactly. And it's made for this. You put down landscape, put this grid down, gravel on top. Pack it in. Yeah.
So whether it's, for sections just like this, almost would have been perfect.
Yeah.
But a lot of our trail sections that every year get super muddy in the springtime and stuff like that, when we go to do our repairs next year, we're gonna put in the budget for these, what are they called? I'm gonna call them clicky things.
Trail grid.
Trail grade.
Grid.
Trail Lego.
Grid, I actually, I have one in my truck and I can bring it in.
Like,
Yeah.
grade GRD,
No,
GRI.
RID.
grid,
Grid.
grid, thank you.
It's literally a grid, a plastic grid that holds the gravel in place.
Yeah.
So it's a gravel surface when you're done.
Yeah, and it holds
But it doesn't wash away because it
Doesn't
stays
wash
within the
away.
grid.
Yeah.
When you get some seismic work or oil work, they use that, it's a similar product, but it's huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, this is just like, then you just.
Yeah, that would have been.
How thick is it, Chad?
Not that thick.
2 inches,
Yeah.
3 inches?
Yeah, he said it works best with 3/4 crush. And that's what we use most of the time on the trails anyways.
So it's kind of a complementary product.
Any other questions for Chad, comments?
How'd you do on your budget? Is this what we should expect for kind of a typical maintenance on the year, or do you have more to go?
Oh, we didn't hear, Chad didn't hear you. Can you repeat that, Doug? Just the beginning bit was cut out a bit.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask how you did on your budget, whether this is a typical amount we should expect kind of year over year for maintenance, or if you have more to go this year.
We have more money.
Is there more money left in the?
Oh,
budget?
yeah, absolutely. We're gonna
Yes.
continue going. They're gonna continue going until the budget's cut or done, but yeah, that didn't use up everything. We still have more.
Okay, no, it looks really good, those pictures. I work in the oil field, so I can't do anything for $60,000, so.
Yeah, yeah, I think, like I said, I think the wood itself was four to 4,500, and then just the labor, it was about a week of labor for 2 guys. So it's,
Yeah,
I see that you did that section from the cemetery to the bike park. How did that go? Is it difficult?
it wasn't that difficult. They did it in 2 days, so.
Cool.
I don't know if anybody knows Nestor, but that guy's genius. He's on my crew. He's an older gentleman and he retires, I'm sad.
Yeah.
He solves problems.
Yeah, he's pretty handy guy.
Yes, and he works really, really hard, so. We appreciate Nestor out there on the trails.
So with the section, that section again, are we talking the same sort of proactive approach over time with that again?
Yeah, I hope so. I think like I don't want to wait until it's a big issue anymore, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they're always proactive.
yeah, absolutely. I've been getting out there and walking it a little bit more than I ever have, so.
Lucky. I've been there now.
I've gotten some feedback from the community. Everybody I've talked to is really happy about that. They said it turned out really well and they're happy that that section's boardwalk now instead of having to slog through the mud to get to the boardwalk.
Cool. I've got a lot of big feedback too.
Right, anything else? Okay, seeing nothing further, we'll move on to parking lot signage update. That's yours too, Jim.
So I have a sign ordered. It's, so that sign that's there, it's just in the middle of that plywood. It's at the parking lot at what?
Carriage lane.
Carriage Lane, it's by Carriage Lane there.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole almost full sheet of plywood there with a sign, you know, this big on it. So I got a sign that big. It's on its, so it's being created right now. It's red with the white writing like the other signs. That's about the update, sorry.
Sounds great.
Do we know about when that is gonna be ready and installed?
It should be. Was ordered this week. They're pretty quick down in Pennsylvania, so probably next week.
Okay,
Yeah,
so not next summer. or
no,
anything like
next
that?
week, next week, maybe the week after, at most, I'd say.
So size of sheet plans, that way better be spelled.
It's not quite at 8 feet, it's 5, 7, 4 feet.
Still better.
Still a big sign, and we're actually, it's funny, because when I was measuring it. I talked to a lady that was just walking and she said. To move it out a bit. So it's kind of closer, and I was like, makes sense, because it's kind of pushed back and that tree right by Carriage Lane kind of blocks it, so we're gonna do that.
So we're gonna do something one sign for.
It's the parking lot for that one by Carriage Lane and
It's for the.
St. Greg's School. There's that parking area,
The actual approved.
The actual-
parking lot
Yes,
for people
yes.
we're supposed to park. when
but
we
it's
go to
kind
the
of easy to
boardwalk.
miss. It's easy to miss the sign and just drive right by it.
Well, I think the current sign's about this big.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
Current sign, I didn't notice still in actually park.
and it really. It blends in with that plywood as well. It's kind of that color too. Yeah. I was gonna,
Yeah, we
I'll
always.
take that sign and put it on the back so it's there. Yeah.
Anything else about the sign? Pretty exciting. Okay. Complete priority action list. Assuming that's yours, Heather.
That's me. I will share my screen. Okay. So I did reorganize the priority list with the motions that were made at our last meeting. So as our top priority, we have section, did everybody have their maps? Okay. We have section AA, followed by kind of that center connecting section that goes every which way, which is T, W, X, and BB. Then we have DME, the tower, section UV, pardon me, section U and V. And then we did the water deck. And then we wanted to speak about wheelchair accessibility today. We left that as a carry forward. And then section C and wayfinding signage was also one that we wanted to discuss today in terms of priority on this list. So those are the last two that we have to deal with right now, which are, like I said, wheelchair accessibility and wayfinding signage. Unless you guys, now seeing the list updated, are happy with where it's sitting. In which case we would just adopt this. And as a reminder, so the reason that we're prioritizing now, knowing that we have a funding opportunity available, is so that we can give this information to our engineers and our environmental folks, and they can sort of, if the project does have to be phased over, let's say 2 winters, they would know which areas are highest priority to this committee and also to the community as a whole. And this is just going to kind of be their guiding light for our designs that we'll get back.
So before I turn it over to the committee, sorry,
Yeah.
Okay, before I turn it over to the committee, what direction do you need from the committee?
One of two things. So we just need to either adopt this as is or land in a place where we're adopting it as amended. If you guys want to make any changes to where, for example, wheelchair accessibility and wayfinding signage are located on this list.
All right, committee, comments, questions, any amendments we want to make? Thoughts?
Well, one, to me, the wayfinding signage is something that could almost be done as an extra, like, can it be done under the maintenance, $60,000 maintenance budget? I'm just throwing that idea out. Like, I want the priority on fixing up the boardwalk that's closed and in danger of being closed. But I'm just wondering, is there another sort of category that the wayfinding signage can be kind of slotted in rather than just be putting right at the bottom here?
I think to tap into the 60K this year might be challenging. However, a large component of the application for our funding source is about how folks interact with the outdoor environment. So I actually think that keeping the signage within the scope of the project will result in it potentially being funded for us.
Okay.
Now we can remove it from, so I did along the side, you can see that it kind of goes 7, 8, and then skips to 11. So I've hidden some in there that you guys made the motion to remove, but I didn't want to lose sight of them. So I can do the same thing with the wayfinding signage with respect to our consultants, right? Because they wouldn't really be tackling anything to do with signage as engineers, right? So I can hide it from here, but we would include it in our funding application as something that is likely going to garner interest and result in us having more funding for the projects as a whole.
Okay.
Well, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You get points on the grant
If
application.
you can get points, yeah.
Jan and then Alice.
Is there a trail committee being formed through some of the council meetings? I've heard Trevor Hawes and stuff talking about trail committee. And I'm asking because that might become part of their purview as well.
Chad's writing his very first report on trail committee is to go to council on the 26th. However, we do have a level of service review, so I'm not sure how those are going to compete with each other. That's contemplated in our report, so that's forthcoming in the next 2 weeks to council. However, even if they establish a trail committee, they would likely say do signage, right? So if we can fit that within the point system for this application for boardwalk only, that I think we should do and we should do it now.
Yeah, I just want to, maybe I'm reiterating something obvious here, but this is a heavy safety concern. I think people kind of forget that. Having run into some people that were pretty terrified because they were lost. It's a pretty important thing. So
I have an idea on this. We got 2 GIS people on this committee. Maybe we could form a subcommittee. And if it goes well, the signage in this area can be used as like a beta for the trails committee if it works out.
Yeah, and I think it would be helpful in terms of our application if we had mock-ups of our signs all ready to go, right? Because then as soon as the money gets approved, then we can take those signs off to Helmig and off they go, and they can go up as soon as possible, right? So that is an option, absolutely.
Okay. Sorry, Alice, was that what you wanted to say? I had you next on the list.
Yeah,
so
for now-
I wasn't
for
sure if
now-
you were
for
adding.
now.
Okay, we'll go to Tom.
Thanks. I agree with Jan's comment on safety, and I mean, I think part of the vision statement is the safe use of the boardwalk. I know maybe not what was intended in the time of its writing, but I think it's well within that purview, so. Prioritize, put it on whatever list to just, and I'm not saying we'll fall off, I just don't want to see it disappear.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Doug and then Beth. Doug?
I'm good just supporting the list as we got it. We talked about it a lot already, but if folks want to put the wayfinding signage into maintenance because it's a relatively cheap thing to do, then that's fine too, from my opinion, or leave it where it is, I guess.
Thanks, Doug. Beth?
Yeah, just the wayfinding signage. I think what Heather's suggesting that would be incorporated into the funding application would be a good place for it, because then you're not losing it. And it will always be right up near the top, like part of whatever is being done for that application. So I just support that idea.
And if you guys wanted to make a motion that that be included, I mean, I was gonna do it anyways, but that would kind of ease Jan's concern that it gets forgotten, right? We'd recommend to put wayfinding signage in the application for funding. And off we go.
Okay. Well, I'll make that motion.
Okay. So Beth has moved to include wayfinding signage funding in the funding application. Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Chad? Yep.
Is there like right now, like you're saying it's a safety issue, and I agree, like, is there something we should right now put up, like right now it should be up, like in this back area, I'm thinking is what you're kind of thinking.
yeah,
So I mean, it's like we could make something, and even if it's a temporary thing,
like you have the little tiny
those,
maps.
those,
It's a black, I think.
Yeah, and it's just on the top of-
It just looks like a black logo.
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are some key ones, and like,
Like if it's a safety concern, I feel like we should maybe
where,
slap up a couple right now and then. Cause I don't know if this is something like, am I allowed to do this? I think it's probably a good idea. Like maybe down in this like end section,
all of that section needs
Yeah.
stuff,
L and N have one or two.
and
right?
there's the wonky stuff, like, where M meets L. And there's a bench there, there is a pole, and there is a map, but it's facing south,
Oh.
so if you're walking down the trail, you don't see
It
it.
is, yeah, okay.
So there's stuff like that. I can forward you an email that I made to town and council about this, and I pointed out, like there's some problems with the sign and the maps that are over near the cougar awareness. There's actually mistakes on that, so I can forward you that
Sure.
stuff if you're interested.
Sure, yeah. Maybe we can figure out some sort of map that we can use. And put a you are here kind of thing on there.
Alice?
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, I'll bring it up again, but I think that the subcommittee, like me, Chad, if you want to probably fires, like we could get together next week for an
Well,
hour.
don't sign me up.
And, okay, if you don't want to, that's fine.
No, I can't.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But like, I think this is something that even, yeah, one or two members in Chad. We could really easily get something going, even just in a few key safety areas, at least that we would have that real fast.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think a subcommittee is the way to go. So should I make a motion?
Yep, if
Okay.
you think, if you want to make a motion to form a subcommittee and.
I think. Unless we want to discuss it more.
I just
Well, we
can't
can- we can
because of
discuss it.
time
It's
and-
okay.
and-
Yeah,
We'll-
so technically, the way it works is a motion gets put on the table and then it's up for discussion. It doesn't go to vote right away.
Right,
So,
okay. So I move to form a subcommittee with 2 members of the Beaver Boardwalk Committee and 1 member of administration to work on signage for the boardwalk. Wayfinding stuff.
I'm just gonna go to Heather.
If the intent is to get some temporary signage up, I don't think we would need a committee. I think that's as simple as taking a walk, like Chad taking a walk with Alice, here, and here. Chad walks away, makes something.
You send an email.
If,
I
if,
can make it. I'm
Yeah, and-
happy to make that for you.
and I think, but if we want to focus on also using that subcommittee to decide what our wayfinding signage will look like in the long term for the application, then I think we need a committee or subcommittee. But if the intention is literally just to solve the right now problem, then I think we don't need a committee and it's just go for a walk and Chad can find some money and we'll scrape something together. We can figure something out.
So Alice, then what would your thoughts be on that? Is this a more permanent committee that's gonna do the long-term signage as well, or just something temporary?
I think for now, something temporary, it's fine. Chad, you can have some time next week.
Yep.
I can be tired.
Okay.
Just do that.
So
Side.
do you still wanna have that formalized then as a working group? That's what I was gonna ask you, actually. I was gonna go to you.
Say that.
Yeah, like subcommittees and working groups, they're all different things,
Oh, I
right?
see.
Yeah.
So-
I see.
Which
so
is
we-
what-
We want something quick and easy that doesn't need terms of reference. or
Exactly.
anything, right?
Oh, it's the community.
So working group might be the 0.
I think so, right? Is that what
Working
they call
groups do also have often a term of reference, but they're not. They don't occur by bylaw. And the reason, but they're much smaller in scope because a working group has a very specific thing to accomplish. They exist only for the time that they are accomplishing that item and then they're disbanded, right? So yeah, just even to keep it informal at this point, just no different than if Alice picked up the phone, called Chad and said, hey, do you want to do a Beaver Boardwalk walk? I think that's probably okay for right now. And then as we move along in the process, maybe then we have a subcommittee that we actually establish their goals, right? And set them out to do that.
So if that's what we want to do instead, then you'd have to withdraw your
Withdraw.
motion. That's okay,
Yeah. I
okay,
withdraw this.
okay, so motion to withdraw needs to be voted on, so all those in favor of Alice withdrawing her motion, please indicate. Okay, so that motion's withdrawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yawn. Yes,
I just, we're done with that. I just had another comment on the. Priority action list, and I'm not sure if it actually fits quite in, but the wheelchair accessibility on Mountain Street, like we probably don't have time to talk about that today, but I was kind of thinking. The access in all the 3 points could be looked at in terms of, like, at one point I thought we were gonna have some angle parking at Reimer Drive. This is way back when, and might have a fine gravel trail to section D whenever it gets fixed up. Even in the off of the parking lot on the west end, I forget the street it's on, which is quite steep going down there by the Sutherland.
Sutherland.
Yeah. I'm wondering if that actually needs a complete redesign at some point, like rather than going straight down, you could start and angle it off to the path, and then you might even want to build out a boardwalk, and that'd be a lower angle, hit the path and then come back at at the entrance at the bottom rather than trying to go straight down the way it is. So I'm thinking there may be some redesign there required, but that's kind of getting out of the scope here.
Yeah, well,
This-
but if that's important and then that's
Yeah.
important priority for the committee, then yeah, it can be extended or changed or.
So how does that read now, Beth? I said, I changed it from Mountain Street, because we were all a little bit confused about that, to at entry points.
At entry point.
Yeah.
I think that's.
And then I think what we can do here as well, because is do the same thing we did with the signage, where you guys just ask me to include that in our application, which will then form part of the recommendations that we're bringing back to council. Because you'll recall that the original Vivo committee had said only certain areas would be widened, right? So this would be an additional recommendation that we could make if you guys give me the direction to include that in the application, the funding application. If everybody's happy with it saying at entry points.
Okay, just before I go back to Beth, I need to ask, where's the Mountain Street access point?
It was something that I think Doug had put up, and then we talked about it the last meeting, and nobody could remember why it was Mountain Street, but then Doug clarified, I think, just saying that access to the boardwalk is not easy if you're pushing a stroller or in a wheelchair or a motorized wheelchair, those kinds of things, yeah.
Okay,
So specifically what that was it was just picked. Oh,
Okay.
no, that's okay. Go ahead, Doug.
oh, I was gonna say that one started as it was picked off that original ISL report where they had looked at the access points and said that Mountain Street was your potential best one for adding new access points. And I don't really care. I was just picking it off there because I assumed that they had put some thought into it. But yeah, I think that's fine, just saying improving wheelchair accessibility at entry points. But I do think that the east side of the lake, like the Reimer side, is probably lesser service than the other access points. So that's one that I would certainly focus on.
Okay, I saw your hand, Jan, but before that, so Beth, do you want to move then to change the wording to wheelchair accessibility at access points?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that, to change the number 8 wheelchair accessibility to at entry points.
Okay. Jan,
No, it's okay. I was just gonna point to it. I thought at some point the conversation about access from Mountain Street ended up being that access beside the Jehovah's Witness or whatever that church is.
yeah, that's what I thought too, because I think there's Chad, you might know, I think there's utility right away that goes through there that can be used as an access point. That's what they were talking about. So this is good. I mean, this gives more clarity because now it's all the access points, not just developing that one that goes beside the church that is currently not used. Jan,
I'd like to make a motion.
well, there's a motion on the table.
Is there?
Unless you're gonna amend that one, we have to deal with that one first.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, any other comments or discussion about changing wheelchair accessibility at entry points? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Doug, were you in favor, Doug?
Oh, sorry, no, I was opposed, but I mean, it's fine. I'm
Okay, no, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so.
Oh, time out, my bad.
Why? Can we ask why he's opposed?
You can ask, he doesn't have to answer.
No, but I think it would be important feedback.
I just like improving access points in general. Right now, we just have two, right? Reimer and Sutherland. Whereas if you kind of make the point of giving yourself wheelchair accessibility to a third point, the end result is you also have a third point of access.
Well, technically, we do have 3 access points.
Yeah, I do use, like when we were working on the reclamation, we would come in by.
Mountain bike park and mountain bike. So there's more than, there's many access points.
So Doug, are you saying for you to be comfortable with it, you'd want to explore new access points too?
No, I actually have not tried that one. I will go for a walk there.
Yes.
Okay,
In fact, that's probably one of the most friendlier wheelchair access.
Like I've seen wheelchair people go up there, like use it as it is already.
There's not a lot of great work there.
okay.
No.
So you got that, Trevor, past 6-1?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Jan, you wanted to make a motion?
I'm gonna make a motion that we ask to have wheelchair accessibility added to, what is it, the future grant writing,
To the funding
just
application.
funding applications.
All right, questions, comments, Alice?
Yeah, the only reason I'm hesitant to do that is because I think that that might have been one of the things that ended up in the ISL requests, and then it kind of ballooned to like this like crazy paved path and like all this, like, and so like I'm just concerned about what it would look like to the engineer that receives that information and how they would interpret it. Can I get your-
I haven't done
Okay,
done two, we'll go. Or is that directly? to that?
directly.
Okay, go ahead, then we'll go to you, Doug.
So this time around, we have the original Bevo committee's stipulations about things that must occur out there. For example, it's not cement decking, it will be wood, right? The vision statement itself talks about kind of that natural environment, right? So that means that a lot of our trails will remain similar to how they are now. And of course, we're gonna work more closely with our engineers than what had occurred previously, where it was just like, make a plan, right? So if that alleviates any of the stress that you have, Alice, I think we're giving them far more direction. That's why we're here today, because one of the later items on the agenda is to go through all of our recommendations and exactly what we want to see in the drawings that those engineers will bring back.
Okay, so just
Okay,
to
Alice.
clarify, Yon's motion would be to include wheelchair accessibility at the current.
Correct.
Okay.
Doug?
Oh, maybe that answered my question. I was just concerned about the wording all, because when you said, I mean, certainly you want to encourage it somewhere and in many places, but whenever possible, rather than all. I mean, otherwise you kind of get stuck, as Alice said, where that requires certain standards and codes that may make it somewhat over-designed elsewhere.
Agreed. Okay. From Beth and then Tom.
Yeah, I just a comment, I guess I ran into Joan Melvin about a week ago and we were talking about this and she said, when Rocky was building, probably in the back, she had brought a relative in a wheelchair and they were driving along the boardwalk and they caught up to where Rocky was actually building it. And they said, this is great and everything. And I said, well, you made my day because he designed it to make sure that wheelchairs could go on it. So that's sort of always, it's our boardwalk, it's not the super engineering standards or whatever, but it's always the intent that wheelchairs be on the boardwalk and they have used it. So I'm just as a comment. Yeah, so that was a neat story for me, because I mean, yeah, my husband was in a wheelchair at the end of his life and we would go around there all the time, but this was a different sort of viewpoint that, here Rocky was so gratified that here he wasn't even done and here comes this person and a friend in a wheelchair. And it's like, yeah, kind of a nice story, actually.
Tom and then Doug.
This administration is probably a little wiser about this as far as how many of these points in an application do you need there? Are we overkill, or is it just do as many as you possibly can?
It really just depends on how you write the application. Sometimes it's weighted, so 30% if it's for accessibility, 10% of your score for environmentalism. In this case, there's just kind of 3 or 4 categories that this application falls under. So no, I don't think it's overkill. Accessibility is one of those items on the list.
Tender to what you're applying for, basically.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, those are things that this community would expect from us as well, right? That anyone be able to access that boardwalk.
Doug and then Alice.
Just an additional comment there. What I already said was that, I mean, an engineer's interpretation of wheelchair accessibility everywhere is probably different from an actual wheelchair user. The latter is probably more brave about it than the engineer. I'd probably only support Jan's motion if it were kind of amended with something like when practical or within reason or something like that.
Alice?
Yeah, my thoughts are kind of along the same lines and stuff, so it's just like. I don't know if we should, like, we shouldn't say for all access points, and we should maybe have like a, this is a nice to have, but not a need to have, or, like. Some.
Within reason.
Yeah.
So Doug, did you wanna ask Jan if he wants to accept that as a friendly amendment? And we don't have to vote on it?
Well, just for clarity, Jan, did you intend specifically just for the entry points, which I agree with should be wheelchair accessible, or was it for all grants applicable to the boardwalk? For clarity.
Sorry.
I mean, was it for all grants, which is what I heard, and maybe I misheard, or was it specifically just for grants applicable to the entry points to the boardwalk?
Yeah, did you wanna speak to that, Jan?
Are you saying ramps or like, oh, I don't understand the word. It's a little bit
He's
confusing.
saying grants.
Right.
Yes, my understanding was that it's for the funding application that we're applying for the Beaver Boardwalk reconstruction. What's that organization again?
Freya.
FRIA. Yeah, for the FRIA funding application. It was for wheelchair accessibility points through the FRIA funding application, correct?
Now, if you don't want all entry points, I'm fine with that. But I mean, I was basically thinking of Sutherland, Mountain, and Reimer.
So
Oh,
I
well, we might be thinking the same thing, Jan. I'd certainly support the idea of all entry points, and then maybe selective use of wheelchair accessibility throughout the boardwalk after that, but just not the whole, the whole thing that's upgraded. But
Yeah,
certainly,
I liked your suggestion, Doug, of just adding the wording where feasible.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Does that kind of capture what you're thinking, Doug?
sure.
Okay, and you're okay with that, Jan?
I'm peachy keen.
Okay, so we can just add that to the motion, Trevor, and then we don't have to do an amendment or anything,
Okay.
because Jan accepted it as a suggestion.
One additional thing that we could add just to focus our engineers is we could say, whatever was used, just within reason, but also in line with the Beaver Boardwalk vision statement. Because the last bit is with minimal impact to the natural landscape. So that's just a way that we can make sure that they understand. Not over the top, just so they can get down safely.
Safely get down that steep gravel hill at Sutherland onto the existing boardwalk, no grand. Was it People with Disabilities Act? I can't remember what it is.
I think so,
It
yeah.
doesn't have to be compliant with that. Because that would be airport properties all over. All over the boardwalk, I don't think anybody wants that, so. Right. So are there any other comments or questions about Jan's motion, Alice?
I'm still really reluctant. I don't think I'll support it at this time, because I'm really worried it's gonna box us in. Unless, I'm open to be persuaded otherwise.
So the other thing that helps to not box us in is that the wording of it stipulates only access points. It doesn't say anything about the rest of the boardwalk, it's only access points.
We're seeing where feasible. So
Yeah, and where feasible, so it's not even all the access points, it's just the ones where it could work. So I don't know if that makes you any more comfortable or not, but
I hate to use the words within reason, because everybody's interpretation of that is different.
yeah.
And
go
to
ahead.
Alice, further to Councillor Stash's point, because we have identified every section of the boardwalk with a letter code, it would be completely outside the scope of this motion to then say, oh, and I'm gonna make AA wide enough for wheelchair access without also having those motions. So that's what's kind of not boxing us in, but keeping us from making the whole boardwalk accessible with just this motion. And if you wanted, we could go access point 1, 2, and 3 and name them in the motion.
All right, any other thoughts, comments, questions, committee?
Are we adding in line with the Beaver Boardwalk vision statement? Yeah.
Jan, it's your motion. Do you want to add that? Okay.
I guess where feasible also means to look at those individuals to see where it is that he feasible.
Can you repeat the motion?
Yeah, so I've got the motion to add wheelchair access to all future funding applications at access points where feasible in line with the Beaver Boardwalk vision statement. Is that correct?
I'm fine with that.
That's fine. You're good with that, Jan? Okay. All right, committee comments or questions are still open. Okay, seeing none, we'll call the motion to question. Oh, sorry, Alice, go ahead.
No, go, please call.
Okay, call the motion to question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that was carried 6-1. How do we record votes now? We record the numbers or just whether it passed or didn't?
I'm recording numbers for now, so just writing 6-1 carry.
Okay. How do they come in the minutes?
Just. We had different minutes this time because it was. The ones that Trevor's been doing carried with the numbers, so carried 9-0, carried 9-0, but not the names.
Okay.
Yeah, so now we'll be doing the names.
Well, maybe, not yet.
So
We haven't
the
talked about
opposed.
that.
Oh, these ones were caught in here too. So it turns out Trevor's been doing that the whole time. Really good job, Trevor. Just carry on. You got it. Okay. That's how we have to.
All right. Committee, what else on the priority action list you want to talk about? Okay,
We're ready to adopt it.
yeah, if there's no additional concerns, we need a motion to it would be in their marching orders, so we'd have to adopt it as amended. If somebody wanted to make that motion. Sure.
Make that motion to adopt priority list as amended.
Okay. Committee, any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? All right, and that's carried unanimously.
Just gonna say this. Go to the next slide. Right.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we did 3-3-1 and 3-3-2, right?
Over there, my copy in front of me.
Well, they were Mountain Street access.
Yes.
And wayfinding sign, it covered all that stuff. You didn't have any additional information?
Yep.
Okay, so that brings us to 3.4, review council report.
All right, I will open that. Everybody got the copy with the yellow in it, correct? Because those were Winston's additions. Yep. You see that okay, Doug? Yeah, okay. All right, I'm gonna zoom in just. All right, so does anybody have, I have a list of questions that Alice had. I have the answers. Winston was able to get back to me. So do you guys want me to start with Alice's questions and then give a response, or does anybody else have questions that they wanted to get started with?
Any other questions, or do we want to start with the ones that were submitted and see what that leads to? I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I've got lots, but I think
Sure.
that's a good way of doing it.
Okay, so I provided this report. Ultimately, our goal today is to finalize what recommendations this committee wants to make to council about what the design will look like that we're going to submit ultimately for funding. So Alice had asked, is the report you sent in the report, it stated that the grant was secured in the amount of $251,000. It is my understanding that that represents 80% of the total project budget and that the town is responsible for paying the other 20. That's correct, Alice. So regardless of the amount we spend, we always have to pay 20% and the grantee pays the 80. However, pending what kind of funds we get from our grant or from this funding application, there may be offset there.
So we may be able to use the other funding for that.
Correct. Is the town responsible for paying the 20%? Yes, we just covered that. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that one, on the percentage of our ICP grant? And that's the one that was doing the ramp connections to the bridge. All right. Alice's next question was about council was explicit in their direction to limit the plaza features. They discussed that a large plaza / viewing platform would increase the impact and include this as a part of the motion in order to minimize the size and impact of the structure. Why is making allowance for a more conducive experience by introducing a larger plaza feature now being suggested? So Winston wrote a big long thing here. I'm just going to summarize that. Ultimately, when admin was discussing it, we wanted to bring every option back to council. Do we think they're going to go that way? Likely not. But in there, you'll see where Winston said, okay, we have the option to lower the bridge, lower the railings, those kinds of things, as well as, right, include kind of that platform on the side. And then he did have a note. He said, our suggestion is by no means trying to change council's direction to administration. We were just placing ideas before the Beaver Boardwalk Committee as food for thought for ideas with the aim to have one final hard look at the view of the FREA funding opportunity to assist in correcting the ills of the past. So it's just that if we're going to do it, we might as well do it right and make sure that we've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. And that includes everybody kind of taking another look at it now that we may have some funds available.
Separately in the council. And she was in a separate.
Thank you.
Sorry,
I
it
didn't,
was the set out to.
Yeah,
I didn't get it.
you can get it, Jan.
I don't have.
If someone forward it
I
to
don't have
us, so I don't have
any.
to. You can
Yeah.
read it. Here, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, you can share it.
So does that satisfy your question on that one, Alice, or do you have?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
could you forward us the email response from Winston?
Yeah.
That would be nice to have.
Can I just finish up with the last two? and
Yeah,
then I'll
yeah,
finish
yeah,
it?
no,
Okay,
just not right now, just.
just later. I gotta write that down.
Oh, no. I thought this was the you said his was highlighted in yellow.
That's in that report, that's
I got
his,
this.
oh, okay, no,
I just haven't seen Winston's.
that is Winston's work for the report is highlighted in yellow. Also highlighted in yellow are the responses to Alice's questions that she sent. So I'll send these back around to everybody out
Yeah,
there.
none of us got them.
Yeah, I just got them like right before we walked in here. So then can we please get a breakdown of the cost for removing and replacing the bridge? He said it can be provided. Today is not possible as the consultant's away on vacation. So he can definitely bring that. Is the replacement bridge made of metal? He's like, it could be metal or it could be a composite of metal and wood. It hasn't been fully researched, and that would be part of, depending on what is decided based on our recommendations to council, whatever council decides is what we would ask them to source. We want a new bridge. We want to just work with our bridge and change it a bit or whatever. Does it use the same support as the current bridge? Same supports can be used with minor modifications. And then you said, what is the cost of removing the current structure, including the supports? He said, I think it is critical that we have the removal costs as a standalone amount for our discussion tonight. This information can be provided once the consultant gets back at the end of the month. So that would form a portion of this report, but we don't have that data right now because she's on vacation.
Yeah, if you're, cause I mean, we're gonna do this. Like I rewatched the August 24th meeting, and I remember like the mayor had, like, he was really trying to figure out how much it would cost to remove and replace with just a simple boardwalk. And the like, they kind of had a ballpark, but it wasn't really presented as a formal option. Like, I really think that if we're going the distance here and redoing this report, like, we gotta get that, just the removal amount and then the simplest structure replacement, and just have those two separate. That way council can look at it and say, maybe this is the best way to go, and maybe it's not.
Which is an option. However, it will form part of the report that since reviewing kind of boardwalk operations with CAO, there needs to be a level of service conversation. If that bridge does not continue to allow for us to have access across that would support equipment, there's a conversation. Hang on, I'm all turned around now. Thank you, Chad. Back here, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, back here. A conversation will be had about eliminating these trails because we cannot maintain them. Right? So that hasn't happened yet. It's just the reality that right now Chad's guys have to bring stuff in there with a wagon. So there are other options. We could always build another trail access or things like that, but Chad has explained that we're kind of landlocked in there's landowners and things like that we're fighting with. So that all forms part of the information that needs to go before council. Which includes, Alice, the option to just take it out and maybe we're gonna build a trail over here. Yes, no.
Oh, I'm
Well,
asking.
Okay.
sorry, I have other people in Beth.
Sorry.
And then
Yeah.
Alice, I saw you too, and then
Me? Yeah.
Beth, and then Alice. And then-
Yeah, okay, well, there's probably a whole lot of follow-up. Well, this is all news to me, that all of a sudden. Like, we were talking, like, to council too. First of all, the town was talking about having vehicle access for safety and for equipment. And then it became, no, this is just a pedestrian bridge, and that's what they voted on last August. So now we're all back again saying, oh, and in fact, we have to take some boardwalk out if we don't have a vehicle bridge. So we're talking a whole different scope here. So you flip the scope again and expecting us just to come here and vote on it tonight. I don't understand.
So
what's
that's not
going
what
on.
we're voting on tonight. We're talking about all of the recommendations about the bridge, and we're gonna go through those one by one. All I'm saying is that there will be a level of service conversation down the road about how these ones are maintained over time. Because the amount of time and money it's costing to get out there, we're not operating efficiently, right? So it could be a level of service conversation that simply says the trail, those pieces of boardwalk will stay there until they crumble, right? And that maintaining them is not going to be part of a regular schedule, right? There's all these other ways we can manage that. However, that is the reality of not having access across the bridge, unfortunately, and not creating an alternative access as well. Or alternatively.
Well, didn't you know this like last August?
We did. It
Why
was,
wasn't that presented in this light? I'm just shocked.
And it-
actually.
it was, but with a new CAO, he sees it as a much higher risk. Than what I guess was previously presented.
Okay, this is all a brand new scope, that's for sure. Yeah, and the other just comment, and we'll probably come back to this. I'm not sure the public and the council and the town are talking about the same thing when you're talking about removing the bridge and replacing the simple footbridge. I think there's several levels of understanding going on there. And at some point, I'm thinking, rather than us going to, as a committee, making some recommendation, it goes to town, it goes to engineers, it goes to council, it goes back, will we need the engineers to talk to directly with the council at some point? Because like, that was my, like, I think we're a lot of, we're all talking the different thing when you're saying removal. everybody has a different idea of what that means, and it's gonna reflect in the dollars, so. Like removal and like I would never consider just removal, that's not even an option, I wouldn't even write that down, although in August 24, Diana had 2 options of removing and not replacing it. I have no idea why she would have done that, the grant is for connectivity. So that to me is a 0 option, we don't even talk about that. This is part of the main trail system, we do have to get across there. Yeah. So that'll, I guess I'm just putting that out as a comment, like we've got to be really serious. All of a sudden Winston wants every option back to council. Well, let's do every option, but so that we all understand every option, because I don't think it was really clear. And it certainly wasn't given to council as a written up option last August.
Albert, do you have a perspective on the understanding when we say of council, when we say removal of the bridge versus removal and replace? Is that a confusion? I don't know. No,
It wasn't
okay.
a confusion when we talked about it in August. Removal was removal, and there's no trail connectivity from the north side to the south side. I think that was fully understood.
But why
And we
would
can't fault administration for bringing that. That's a viable option that had cost and impact a service to it. Council has to have that option put before them to make a decision. They didn't support it, and it wasn't likely that they were going to, but it has to, it's as a responsible administration that brings a full range of options for council to make a decision. That has to be one of the options.
She didn't bring the option to remove and replace with a simple footbridge, so she wasn't bringing all the options to council.
Yeah, we can't keep continuing to go over ground in discussions we've already had. We're here to look forward
Yeah,
and move
I agree.
forward. I've said several times that it did come to council several times as a very high level discussion about removal and replacing with something different. And it wasn't supported by council to direct administration to move forward with that. So anyway, it's okay
That
though,
was not
that's
my
all,
understanding of what
that's,
council meetings at all. I did not get that impression.
okay, again, this is not a forum for discussing what's happened in the past. We're looking to positively move forward and potentially make changes to what's there, what's not there, make recommendations so that the committee recommendations are what's supported by the community and puts the options forward for decisions.
But then Winston is bringing every option back, so he's going back.
Right, so one of the things you guys could say today in this room is, Beth, you could say, okay, I want in this report a motion that says, or a recommendation from the committee that says, remove the bridge, replace it with a simple footbridge. Now, this room will vote on that. If it carries, then it goes in the report as an option. If it does not carry in this room, it does not go in the report as an option. That's why we formed this committee. Right, so that's how we're gonna go through each one of those things today, right? So for example, if that motion did carry in this room today, then in the report, I unfortunately have to tell council and the community that if we replace it with a simple footbridge, we either need to find an alternative access route to the back trails or have a level of service conversation about how they will be maintained going forward. That's all. It's just a clarifying statement so that council can be aware of all of the things surrounding every option, all the impacts that we might encounter down the line.
And that's important because that actually wasn't a part of the August 24th discussion. You said that's new to you, that's new to me too. Yeah, so that's, I mean, council decided, I mean, the bridge is still capable of carrying equipment, but the ramp options that council directed administration to move forward with aren't. So knowing now that there's no maintenance equipment access to get to the back to be able to feasibly maintain the trails, as Heather said, that's a level of service discussion, and that's an important level of service discussion. There's a whole service level review for everything the town does that's being developed and coming back to council for decision. That's going to be a part of it.
Do we need that before we even get into this discussion?
Need what part?
Need the level of the service, because we like, again, Albert saying this is brand new to all of us, and now we're going to go through all the options, but not really understanding what's in that level
So
of service.
many moons ago, because there's been, I don't even know, 20 reports on this bridge brought to council. There was a conversation around the fact that staff could not maintain the back section without being able to get across. However, I don't think it was as clear or as highlighted as important as I'm explaining it to you guys now. So I think that administration of that day did indeed fail council and this community by not really highlighting that as a serious problem, right? If we do want to maintain those back trails. However, at that time, when we got shut down and we weren't sure what we were doing with the boardwalk, we didn't know if we would be keeping those back trails, right? Like all of the, that was part of the survey that the Bevo committee did. They went to the community and they said, are there any that you want to get rid of? Right? And the community came back and said no, but at the time, we only knew what we knew, right? So that's why we're here today, is to figure out what recommendations do we want to put forward.
I
Chad,
just want
how do
to
you maintain
clarify.
it now?
I want to clarify too, when I said that's news, it's not actually news. And I
That's okay.
apologize, Heather, because it did come to council that if it was a pedestrian boardwalk to go across the bridge, they wouldn't be able to get equipment, but it came with a proviso. It was, but I'm sure we can find an alternative to come through the mountain bike park or something like that. So it wasn't really as serious a consideration as it now is, because we've
done a little
sounds
bit
like
more
we
work.
found out
Yeah.
since then that it's going to be prohibitively expensive to have to do it through the mountain bike park or a different access.
So, Chad, what are you doing now? How are you doing or nothing?
Well, I mean, I was talking about Nestor. Imagine we have to do work on section M. Need to replace a 2x12. Nestor has to literally lug a 2x12 and pulling a wagon with all his tools. That's how he gets in there right now. It's just that's how it's done right now. And if he needs multiple, he has to do multiple trips, so back and forth,
So where?
whatever closest access.
And it's also a health and safety concern because we've got these guys doing that kind of repetitive work, right? And it's not an efficient use of time when we have other areas throughout town that need our guys. We only have so many guys, but if we could pile everything in machinery and then, oh my gosh, I forgot the drill, right? So now he's got to walk back there with his wagon, right? It takes a whole day to replace one little couple 2x4s because you've got to walk back and forth. That's not an efficient use of taxpayer dollars.
And if they could drive like our little UTV or Gator in there, to whatever point, it'd be nice.
Okay, so I have a queue here. I have Alice and then Jan and then Doug. So if we could move on, Alice.
Okay, so, I hear what you're saying, Chad. The bridge is built to highway standards, so like it's gonna it accommodates way more load. Like you guys realistically, you need a quad back there, right? Like that would do most of it, like that would probably solve most of your problems, right?
I think it was built for
It's
skid
10,000
steer.
pounds.
Dear.
A skid steer, right? Like max.
That's
It's
not
not-
highway
no,
standard.
no.
It's 10,000 pounds. It's
No.
small equipment.
Yeah.
So like I'm saying, like the boardwalk that would span over that crossing, if we were to replace it, like it wouldn't even have to be that wide kind of to accommodate a quad, right? Like,
It's a Gator, it's a little wider.
is there a solution where?
Well, I mean, I've been told, I don't know exact numbers, but I've been told there's numerous times where fire department had to go back there and rescue somebody. And they're going in, they have side by sides, they have this machinery that they could get back here and then, but no, they're lugging people out. And I've heard it was like 7 instances or so that they've had to do that on some of these trail systems. They
Well, I
could
mean,
get,
but that's a reality in trails, right? Like, that's gonna be a reality in John Park.
Yeah.
That's part of having backwoods trails. This is a reality. There's
I-
that too.
So that's
I
right,
think
and
in that
that's
bridge-
up to the committee to decide to make a recommendation, but again, back to administration, they have to make sure that they're bringing balanced and full gamut of options for consideration. Because part of their job is to make sure there is a balance between being able to enjoy the boardwalk and making sure that it's safe for the people that are using it. And I actually have a question about getting equipment back there. my understanding is it's more than just a quad to carry the tools. You need to get skid steers, mini excavators, gravel trailers so that you can gravel the trails that are back there. And that's why it was designed to be a 10,000-pound bridge, so it could accommodate the smaller construction equipment.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Which also does significantly assist with our ability to reconstruct the other portions of the boardwalk, because the equipment can drive then over the bridge to do the stuff on the south side, which right now we don't have easy access and are have to wait for winter, right? And instead of building an ice bridge, let's drive over the bridge that we create, right? So it's just like Albert said, we have to bring balanced options. Do I think we could maybe find another way in and build a big trail? Maybe, but I know that that land is owned by somebody else back there. So now we're talking about buying that land off them. Will they even let us?
Who owns it?
I don't know.
Back here,
Yeah.
We can look into.
K, well, there's that K.
Oh, a
Lane,
private-
K Lane construction.
Okay,
I think
land,
they own that.
yeah, they have a
They
lease
own back here. Yeah.
Well,
And to be fair to them, they have us go in the.
Yeah, just to keep things fair and in order, we do need to go through the chair, okay? We want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak and express their opinion. Yeah,
What do you want? You want us to make recommendations on what to do with the bridge tonight?
Yep, so further down in the report, we have a section of previous recommendations that were made by the Bevo committee, and then I've started making additional ones here. And then we would just continue with the recommendations that this group wants to put forward.
I say let's get on with it, because I'm gonna be voting that we get rid of the bridge. I mean, that we keep the bridge as it is and move forward and stop talking about the damn bridge. We got a perfectly good bridge sitting there. Complete waste of money it was to put it in and all that stuff, but it's there and we can work with it and let's go. I'm so done talking about it.
Doug and then Alice.
Well, I was just going to make a comment that based on what Chad achieved there with maintenance so far, which seemed pretty impressive based on those pictures, you know, in terms of ease of access, it seems like his ease of access was already fairly sufficient for doing a fairly high chunk of work there. Anyway, just a comment. I certainly prefer the concept of a pedestrian bridge, is my opinion.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Alice.
So, I mean, this bridge was put in. And it was advertised to the community as a replacement footbridge, and it ended up being a vehicle bridge. At the end of the day, a vehicle bridge, a road was built through this community gem without any real public consultation and without the consent of the public. So. And the ramps. We don't have a good solution right now. So. We have to move forward. According to our vision, which is fiscal responsibility and environmental responsibility, and whether we like it or not. There are decisions to be made about this bridge. And this bridge is probably the main reason that this group was formed at all. That whole fiasco that happened, that's why we have a community oversight committee now. So we need to do this.
Tom.
Not to digress too far, but my understanding of the plazas as they exist now has to do with transitions to section AA. In order to build a proper transition to section AA, we need a plaza of a certain size to do it. I don't believe there was anything superfluous in what was originally proposed was over and above. I think as far as AA to transition to a ramp, that's the way it had to be done. The way I understand it. Vehicular access. I admit there's a bit of news here for me because it seems to have evolved. I mean, I've heard everything from an ambulance. Now we're talking about a skid steer. Ultimately, we're talking about sustainability of a reasonable section of the boardwalk. It's a bit to digest for me. I understand we're talking about replacement simple boardwalk, and that's still defined in my estimation. I've not had a chance to talk about what that might look like. Is it going to be 2 lanes? And we already have to talk about vehicular access as a sustainable part of what we have. I'm not sure how that goes. Replacement of the bridge, I'm not in favor. I don't know, some of my reading of some of this stuff requires a hydrological study in order to do that, which in August was called. What was it called? I think it was between $25,000 to $40,000, and that was obviously 2021. So where those prices hold, I don't know. There was discussion of the free board, and I think that's the AEP thing. I don't really understand the full ramifications of that, but I think there's a lot more to it, and there could be a rather large pile of money just to get back where we started, and that's concern.
And time.
I'm time with no question.
Thanks, Tom. I'm gonna try and, I want to refocus the conversation a little bit. This part of the agenda is about reviewing council's report. So it's the opportunity to ask questions and get answers if administration can answer them regarding the council report. After that, then we're going to move on to the committee recommendations. And when we get there, though, my suggestion is that we don't just bring up a topic and then just talk it around the table, because that doesn't move us forward any. It's important that if you have a thought and an idea of something that you want to see, a change you want to see, something different, that it gets moved, and then we can talk about the motion, and then the motion's called to question, and then we can move on to the next thing. Okay.
So were there any questions specifically regarding perhaps this yellow section here that Winston contributed? It does a bit of the breakdown. He added the information that I didn't know throughout my report, so I have to go back, and in certain instances, I just called it the grant that we applied for because I couldn't remember what it was called, right? So he's provided that additional information in here. He's put in a couple options for us to kind of react to today, and then of course we can incorporate anything that we would like to see in there. And then likely what I would do is draft it all up so that we have a good copy. I can send that around so we can see it.
Hey, so are there any questions on that? Yes.
I guess, I don't know if this comes later, but like even this larger plaza feature to join the west to the north ramp. Were all options looked at to join the west boardwalk to the, like, to the ramp to the north ramp? Like, do you really need to have a ramp up to the bridge from the west boardwalk, or can you just cut across at grade level and join the boardwalk when it comes down the north ramp? Like, were those options looked at?
So again, these are just things that were on Winston's mind, right? And we addressed that through these questions that Alice already asked, because she asked the same thing. She said,
Yeah.
whoa, we said, no, we don't want a big plaza, right?
Yeah.
But he's just saying, like, we could take AA, right, and ramp it up, right, as opposed to rerouting it. But if you guys want to reroute it and have it join somewhere else, we can do that too.
I'm not sure if we have all the options in front of us to make all these
Which is
decisions
for you
tonight.
guys to come up with what you would like to see. So let's try. Are there any other questions on the report? Oh, Doug has one.
Doug? Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Sorry, that total amount there, 391, because I see you had the original grant plus the second grant with the Western diversification. There was also other funding options that were talked about in a closed session last meeting. I just want to understand 391, that is the grand total. That is it. That is all the free money that is available.
No, that's the money that's already been secured.
Okay.
We haven't put in our application for the additional funding for the remainder of the boardwalk yet.
Okay, so we have 391 of total money from existing grants plus an unknown additional amount.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, Alice?
So this report that's going to council, is this going to now integrate the bridge and the boardwalk finally, basically one report.
If that is the decision of council, which ultimately I think is the goal of the report, because we want to do one design and get the whole kit and caboodle done.
Any further questions? Yep. go ahead.
I do just have to make this comment because there was talk of the hydrological study being required if there's a bridge that is at a lower grade level. And my understanding is that the previous bridge was at pretty much at the water level. It only started flooding in the last couple of years. It lasted 15, 20 years and it got old. It was made of wood. It wasn't structurally compromised from ice flow and debris. That was not an issue that we're seeing. I really question the necessity of a hydrological study in that area, especially considering we know that the levels of lake regulate themselves by the outlet on the east side. Like it's a really wide open area. You're not, it's not super channelized. You're not gonna end up with these giant ice flows. It just really.
And unfortunately, Winston's not here and he and Diana would have worked on that version of the report. However, it may have come from AEP to say we might require this of you, right? So then we got to throw that in the report too. But my understanding with the person we've spoken to recently is that a large portion of the sections, bridge excluded, can be treated under a wave, right? So they're getting more familiar with the type of work we're doing and we're coming up against less hurdles than we were seeing before. So I would tend to agree without knowing anything else and why they put that in the report. But unfortunately, he's not here today. I can ask, I can take that back as a question.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and then Tom.
I don't think any of us can make decisions based on what one of us thinks. We're not experts. So town admin and council, they're all gonna say, well, no, we need engineers, we need blah, blah, blah. We need to ask AEP or if we need a hydrological, it's not gonna go by what one of us thinks. So by getting into all that, we're gonna be delaying.
Tom.
And I think too, some of the discussion last meeting about approvals and some of the subjectivity you deal with an AEP and the opinion you get. It's a roll of the dice, and I don't think that's acceptable either. You can end up with more time. You can end up with a wave, or you could end up with a hydrological study. You could end up with almost anything, and then you really don't know depending on the day and who tells you what's what. And it's pretty hard to plan or to give any certainty to any at that point. That's just not acceptable.
Yeah, I think so. Cool.
So at the end of the day, whether we need a hydrological study, that's going, or whether it has to be a wave for a wear or a full water act approval, that is dependent on what we design, right? And we will only know that after we've made decisions on what we think the community would like. And then at that point, we have 5 years to complete the whole project per the requirements of the granting agency, right? So obviously we don't want to delay the ramps anymore. We need to get that put to bed this winter. However, for the remainder of the project, all the other areas of the boardwalk, we have time to get our proper approvals done, make sure we're being environmentally responsible, make sure we're making the right choices about, what types of materials and that kind of thing. So I think we just need to focus on what the design would look like in an ideal world.
Yeah, Tom.
Just always hear the ticking, which is the clock. So what kind of timeline for approval rate?
So again, it depends on, so for most of our reconstruction of our boardwalk, if we're keeping the exact same footprint, we don't need any other approvals now, with the exception of the tower, right? So we could have, if we keep the exact same footprint, those piles come out of where they were, new piles in, we're good to go. Our maintenance plan lasts 10 years. So we can get a good chunk of that done with no additional requirements. It's just the side things like the tower, that's going to be a new approval. We know that. the water deck, depending on how we design that, might need an approval. We don't know. But where that water deck is on our list, right? We'll tell the architect or engineers, okay, well, if that's that high of a priority for them, I probably shouldn't engineer something that's going to require a Water Act approval because they want it and they want it now. So it's on floats, let's say, right? I understand why it's kind of confusing. We're in a situation where we have this pot of money and we just need to have a design. And at the end of the day, even if we don't get approved for these funds, we've spent another grant, the 140, to have a shovel-ready project so that when other grants do become available, we can start picking off section by section by section and getting this done. Otherwise, we're all sitting around this table with no money to do any of the work, right? So at the end of the day, just moving forward with designing gets us a shovel-ready project to submit on other grants if we don't get everything we want out of this one.
I guess to having shovel-ready projects, if you run into the contingency of needing a secondary project or a different.
Correct.
Like we did last winter.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so speaking of ticking of the clock, we are getting late, we've got a lot to cover yet. Yeah, just one other thing though that I do want to mention. That having the committee expend a lot of time and effort in talking about what's necessary and what's not necessary in their mind to be able to move things forward is a bit of a fruitless exercise. Because this committee doesn't accept liability for what winds up there. The town does, and by extension, the engineering company that puts their stamp on the design of everything does. If they say, I want a hydrological study before I'm going to stamp this design, that's their decision, and the committee really has no say in saying that's not required. So we can talk about it. Everything's free and able to talk about. It's all on the table. I just want to caution the committee that some of the stuff, we can't just arbitrarily say we don't need that. Somebody else ultimately decides if it's needed or not. Alice?
I have a question about page 2 at the bottom, other Boardwalk recommendations, that number 1, was that something that we decided?
No, this is just something I typed an example. Yeah, that's something I typed in there, just so that you guys would kind of understand where we needed to go with each of our, however many we're gonna write.
And these are recommendations to council.
Correct, recommendations to council from this committee, and then council decides whether they will adopt your recommendations or not. They may even decide, don't spend the 140 that you had on that grant on the free application.
And we're not recommending what options administration presents.
Correct.
We're
So if you scroll to the top of the report, administration really only provides one recommended action, right? And that's right here.
yeah,
Then council reads through the report, and if they don't want to make that recommendation, which says to take all of your guys' recommendations and have us put that in the application. If council looks at that and goes, no, I don't like option or recommendation 3 and 5, they will provide administration an amended action for us to achieve, right? And say, okay, admin, go forward and apply for this, but not with the Beaver Boardwalk Committee's recommendations minus number 3 and number 5. So,
okay.
yeah.
Yes.
Do we have these options in front of us tonight? Like 3, 5, I'll have to look at what
No,
is
we're
option.
creating them tonight. That's what this committee is to do, right? So for example, if I may, Chair. Okay,
Yes, please.
so I'm now looking at the yellow section bullet 1. So I'm hearing from the group that we don't want to recommend anything about a new plaza, correct? So then somebody would make a recommendation to say, or a motion rather, to say, Heather, we're building the west ramp to adjoin to the, remove that, right? And then we vote on it and it comes out of the report.
Okay.
And then, for example, I go to, do we want to remove the gravel below the ramp? Is that something you guys want to do? Yes or no? Right?
It's
And
probably too much at this time.
Yeah, I would
We could
focus
sort
on
out later. once we have the ball rolling for the bridge and the boardwalk, it's just.
Right, but these, like, if we're gonna be building on top of it, wouldn't we want to take the gravel, right? Like, we need, this will form what I'm asking the engineers to decide.
We can take the brakes off temporarily. Gravel's more freely, but this is not. Like
I don't think that's it's not.
that's my opinion. Yeah.
Trevor?
This is a question for Chad. If the bridge is to remain and it's 10,000 pounds load bearing capacity, how will the ramps affect your access over the bridge? Can they be made?
They have to be made to take that way as well, essentially.
So is that a motion we should be adding?
Yeah, so that's bullet 3.
Oh, is it already done?
Yeah, so if we, so this is just something Winston was talking about, just options, right? So then I would take this, construct approach ramps to accommodate maintenance and emergency vehicular, blah, 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 and move it down into your guys' actual recommendations, if that motion carries today.
Okay, sorry.
Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd like to have a visual of what that looks like, this increased ramp, to accommodate maintenance and emergency, like, I think. Like, that's what is this whole thing gonna look like at the end?
so
We're all just
again,
kind of
the
bypassing.
design, so I tell an engineer what I want. So I'll say, I want these ramps to accommodate maintenance and emergency vehicles. Right? And they will design that with the vision statement and everything in mind, knowing all the hurdles that we've had before. So don't build me one with a bunch of gravel, that's no good, right? Then they'll design it and then this group is going to look at it. That's when we have the pictures. I can't create pictures and I can't have them design 12 different options because we can't afford that.
Alice?
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
I think my brain just needs to reset and then I can come up with some recommendations.
We never really moved to the next point. That's what I was trying to redirect the conversation to make sure we stayed focused on getting clarity about reviewing council's report and then moving into the next one. So we will take a break before we move to 3.5, but are there any other questions regarding 3.4 review council report? Clarifying questions, not debate, not discussion.
Yeah, I got a clarifying question. I just
go
I
ahead,
help
Doug.
understand that this is mostly focused on the bridge and the ramps, the prioritization, the 1 to 8 items that we had previously. Are those included in this or not included in this?
Yes, thanks, Doug. So now that those have been approved today, they will form part of the recommendations included in this report now. And I'll do it as an attachment so council can see, as well as the map will be attached to, so that they have reference to what we're talking about.
So do you want us to try to formulate some opinions based on that 1 to 8 prioritization into this report, or do you want it to be a totally separate supplement that you will then write and attach separately to this?
No, if you have recommendations specifically about our 1 to 8, let's hear them. That's the intent of today. And if you have a point you want to make a motion and the group will decide whether it goes in or not.
Okay, but the list of 1 to 8 will still be attached as a supplementary, even if it's not in writing here. These are still things that.
Correct, because that, yes, because that will form a large portion of the information that the engineers will require in order to make their plans about what's important to this community.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Doug. All right, anything further? Okay, seeing nothing further, we will take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back to 3.5. All right, committee, we're gonna move on to 3.5, committee recommendations, Beaver committee boardwalk parameters. Heather, is there any intro?
Yes,
Okay.
so on the screen, there's a chart. These are some of the recommendations that came from the original Beaver committee. These are the kind of the parameters that we now as a committee have to play within. However, these are just ones that I know we've talked about. So for example, The middle one, so to ensure the widening to a minimum of 1.8 meters of the boardwalk at points of interest and on heavily used arterial sections of the boardwalk. We had talked at the last meeting about the fact that the BBO committee likely made this decision largely based on the additional cost of widening so that two people could pass with a stroller and that kind of thing. So my question to you guys is, are we okay with keeping that where it's only certain sections will be widened? Or would you guys prefer to see the whole thing widened?
Yes,
I thought we had dealt with this and that it was okay to have at 1.2 meter as it is now, with the exception, say, of the Sutherland entrance and maybe the main trail, like up and over the bridge, whenever that gets built. So I thought that was dealt with at some.
It cannot have been dealt with without taking a recommendation back to council. So if you're saying now, when we rebuild this, I want it to be 1.2,
Yeah,
then that's what I'm asking you guys to make a motion on now. Or do we want to just say, nope, we're good with 1.8 everywhere? Or do you want it wider? Right? That's what I'm looking for here today, because council has already decided that it will be 1.8.
so we had talked about it before, right? So, and Heather's not saying that is what's happening,
Right.
it's just an example. If
yeah.
the committee wants it, the whole thing to be 1.8, or stick with what's in the original recommendation, or whatever option committee wants.
Oh.
It could stay exactly the same if there's no.
Yeah, because like, I mean, with the fine line repairs this winter, like they just, like it saved money, they just took everything off, put new stringers and new piles and everything and put unused, we're able to use a lot of the boards. So I think we have discussed at that point that it would be 1.2 for last year.
It says to ensure the widening to a minimum of
Oh.
1.8 of the boardwalk at points of interest only. So that's like at the school area, right? Or maybe certain sections where it gets really compounded. The BBO committee just wanted to give us the opportunity to widen certain sections where it made sense. So all I'm asking you guys right now is, do we want to stick with exactly as this is worded, that it stays as is and only gets widened at points of interest? Or based on previous conversations around connectivity and funding that's now, or pardon me, not connectivity, accessibility and funding that's now available, do you guys want to change that? I'm just asking if you want to change your minds.
Alice?
So this was recommended by the BBOC to council, then council approved it.
Correct,
This one.
which is right.
Okay, so, given the cost savings of reusing planks, I personally would like to see most of the boardwalk remain at 1.2 meters. I also think it's best for slow user experience in terms of slowing you down, bringing you into the environment instead of just racing through the area. I think it really adds to the experience, and I think that the 1 point. Oh yeah, the footprint that just keeps it.
So committee, I think it's important, we're kind of, we're running at this thing from the back. We need to get at it from the front. We're discussing an option that nobody's even put forward yet. So that's why when I said previously, it's important, if you have a change that you want to see, it's important to put it forward as a motion. Then we have something to talk about. Right now, we're talking about changing. Nobody's even put an idea forward and we're discussing around it, and that really slows the process down. So if we can actually get somebody to move for a change, and then we have something that we can talk about, whether we're in support of it or we're against it, and we can discuss and debate that way.
Okay.
If that makes sense to everyone.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to maintain the width of the boardwalk at 1.2 meters. With the exception of the main trail crossing and Sutherland entrance, I don't really see any other. That could be, like, this whole, like, I don't want the 1.8 meter to be left because you could interpret that all over the place. So I would like to see
Okay. So Beth, you're moving that the entire boardwalk is 1.2 meters wide, correct?
Yeah, with the exception of those few, like the main trail, which would be up and over the bridge, the Sutherland entrance. You know, those are 1.8, that would be fine, but I do say,
So like access points and water crossings.
Well, careful, Alice, because
Yeah.
you'll remember that
careful, yeah,
AEP has now told us that the whole boardwalk can technically be a water crossing.
yeah, I would be careful.
But I think we're on the right track here. And I think we're on the right track. So if we
Yeah.
can have,
Discussion, yeah, discussion.
because I think what the Bevo committee had intended with this one was for this committee to then pick the areas that should be widened so that people can experience the boardwalk better. So that's, if we think that definitely, for example, like Beth is saying, that's the bridge, which we haven't called, we don't have a section name there, but we'll call it north-south connection, right? That will be 1.8. And that Sutherland will be 1.8. And right, so I think we need to go through the sections. But if that's motion for just those sections, correct?
Yeah, that's just, because like, it was interesting what you said, like for people to enjoy it more, but the whole point of it is to bring. The whole point of is to make a bridge between our busy urban lives and the natural world. And that means slowing people down, getting them to be aware of their surroundings, even people coming. The whole thing, so that's why the 1.2 is so important, as well as this cost savings. But so this interpretation of like, so people can enjoy it better, those kind of, like, what are we talking about there? I don't want to get into-
Specifically, we're
Yeah.
talking about school classes who
Yeah.
all of them can't fit along the water's edge. So we had talked about like, okay, what if we made like a little triangle section? So then there's 3 sides where then the whole class can get down and like be near the water, right? That's what they meant by widening certain points of interest. And whether that's widening the boardwalk or doing like a classroom, right? That's a widened area of the boardwalk.
I won't support this motion because I would either like to keep it the way it is, or I would even go forward and say the whole thing should be 1.8 because those new sections are amazing. And I've heard a lot of people comment on how they like it wider. I had a couple from the United States the other day stop me over near at the Beaver Dam, we're chit chatting, and they said, it's too bad that it can't all be wider like that new section. And because it's hard to get around people, and now after our learning from COVID, distance is sometimes good. So it's not going to increase the footprint, they're going to stay on the same paths.
Oh, it'll increase the footprint by probably.
No, we have to go through the chair, okay? We cannot, everybody has to have a fair opportunity to express their opinion. You're allowed to counter, but it has to go through the chair, please. Sorry,
My understanding is that the poles or whatever they're called, the piles are the same width, they're just longer boards on top, so. I wouldn't support this motion.
Alice?
The 1.8 meters, like the square footage of boardwalk is like gonna be like. Almost 1.5 times as much as it was before, like we don't.
That's not the footprint.
Just, sorry.
Well, no, but
Same consideration to Alice, please.
Like the boardwalk goes over vegetation doesn't grow as well under the sections of the boardwalk, it affects the environment, period.
Okay, Tom, did I see your hand? I think Tom and then Trevor.
I wouldn't support it. Well, I'm mixed on this because we're talking about some arterials and some access to the boardwalk as well. So if you were to replace, say, section C, the Reimer access where the bridge is, I think that should be wider. I think there are instances where it makes sense. I'm not really for widening the entirety. But I think there are instances where you could argue widening it to 1.8 makes sense. So I think we have to becomes a case by case. I think, like I say, the Reimer access were to be replaced. I think 1.8 makes sense there. And that's one instance. I'm sure there are others.
Thanks, Tom. Trevor?
Just two quick things. One, I thought it was widened to 1.5, not 1.8, just thinking the exact same thing.
Okay.
Which it's only an extra foot, but it makes a huge difference. I agree. With the motion, I would like to specify which sections exactly we're talking about, which would basically identify what are arterial sections and main traffic points for. That's all I have.
Thanks, Trevor. Doug?
My opinion is that that wording is already general enough. It can basically suit whatever it is you want it to suit. So I'm kind of happy just leaving it as it is.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Heather?
Just a response to Doug, the challenge with this wording, Doug, is that that doesn't provide me as administration with guidelines to give our engineers, because to Alice's point, they will run with it, right? So I honestly would prefer if we were like, hey, DD 1.5 or 1.8, next CC one. Well, I mean, we already did those, so don't do those, but BB 1.8 or 1.5, right? We vote on 0.5 and then we vote on 0.8, 0.2. I don't even. know.
Right now,
It's current, 1.2 current.
And that's the motion.
Right, okay, yeah.
1.2.
Yeah.
Alice?
Is, I thought DD was 1.2.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so, so,
CC the only one.
CC is the only one, yeah.
and that's the section beyond that everyone, that's people that they wanted it to be the whole. You talked to some Americans that wanted it to be.
I've talked to many people that I like CC because of the extra width, not just the couple last night.
And sorry, CC is 1.5, right, okay.
Yeah, so I've got to at least change that to 1.5.
Okay. Anything further on the motion that's on the table?
Well,
Well, we need to identify the section before we.
Well, this motion doesn't identify the sections. This motion basically just says 1.2 everywhere. Except where it already isn't, is my understanding of this motion.
Except Sutherland entrance and the north-south Maxwell Bridge Connection Center.
yeah, and I suppose, I mean, yeah, I don't want, what I'm trying to do is make sure the engineers don't run with it, like you say with this wording, even the 1.8 is wrong, it should be 1.5.
It's not incorrect, Beth. The BBO committee specified that the rest of it would be whatever it was replaced at, but that certain sections of interest would be at 1.8 of a minimum. Like the learning classroom, for example.
Yeah,
So do you know exactly where like the kids are having this issue? Is it just in one, on like which letter sections?
I think it's largely around like a lot of our closed sections right now, unfortunately. But they do a lot of their work kind of on the Y, X, W, T, kind of around there. And then when the AA, when the classroom was not sunk in, or that dog leg wasn't sunk in, they line them up along there, right? But when they're right around the Beaver Dam is where it gets a little tricky with them.
Alice?
So I would be reluctant to widen that whole section just because like you're talking like this is like it, we're already encroaching on the beavers quite a bit here. So I would like caution, but I could see just doing like half of W or something, you know, like a pull out or
Yeah, that's cool.
like there's so much. Like maybe you can like, so maybe we could add to this motion, you know. Add a pull out to W, add a pull out to X, add a pull out to blah, blah, blah.
Let's just deal with this motion though, if we can, and then there we can make all kinds of subsequent motions, and I think that was Heather's suggestion, was for the committee to kind of give her some direction about where they see value in having wider sections. So I think this one's okay, in my opinion. It's okay the way it is. It's just, it basically says everything is built at 1.2 other than what was it, Trevor? Sorry, Sutherland and
Sutherland entrance, which is section CC, and north-south Maxwell Bridge connection.
So basically, we'll vote on that.
And then
We either agree with that or don't, and then once a decision's made on that, then we can make subsequent motions on widening certain sections or whatever we want to do.
okay, and so if we decide after the fact to widen one of the section that doesn't contradict this.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No, that gets defeated. You can make whatever
well,
whatever
if
other
it's
motion
carried,
you want, or if it's carried, yeah,
okay.
or if it's carried, you can say, yeah. That's fine, but we also want to add. I don't know, whatever. Okay, makes sense. All right, comments, questions? Okay, I'll call it to question. Trevor, if I could get you to read it though, the whole thing.
Motion is to maintain existing boardwalk with 1.2 meters with the exception of Sutherland entrance, section CC, and the north-south Maxwell Bridge connection section.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. All those in favor? Opposed? And that was defeated 4-2.
Three, Trevor voted for
Oh,
three.
sorry, 4-3. Yep, sorry, apologies. Okay. All right, so that's the first one out of the way, so we kind of got the hang of it. Committee, what's flat, or what do we want to see? What are our recommendations?
Okay, so, like, not based on this. Business. Like what, like Tom, why did you defeat it? Like, to me, you might, to me, it like.
Sorry,
for us to go-
we can't keep going back and reviewing every time we make a decision and getting people to justify why they voted a certain way. We have to move forward. It's 7:30 already. We're gonna be here until midnight. So if we can make motions and then be able to move forward with them. It's important that the committee accepts the will of the committee. Once the will of the committee is expressed, it's important to be able to move on. Jan?
I'd like to make a motion that section C and sections P, W, X, B, B be widened to 1.5. My reasoning, am I allowed to?
Oh, yeah, you can speak to it. We'll just make sure Trevor got all your sections, so.
Yeah, sorry, section
C,
C.
and then the main thoroughfare of B, B, X, W, T
1.5.
to 1.5. Whatever D is, so good question. Whatever CC is right now.
It's 1.55.
Okay.
1.55, no, it's 1.5.
I'll be able to stay here another 10 minutes.
I just got my map open. Can someone repeat that again, please?
I'm putting a motion that we make section C
See,
and BB X W T at whatever the width of CC is, which we think is 1.5.
sorry, X, W, and T, was it? Okay. yeah, I see.
BB X W T.
T.
Did you say C
And
as
C.
well?
See, up in the northeast.
C up in the north,
Yeah.
and I will speak to all.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay,
I know, I
I
get
was
lost.
looking where it was connected and I'm like, why can I not find it? Okay, gotcha.
My reasoning is, well, for the BBXW, that's a main little thoroughfare. That's a very, very popular route. Carriages, dogs, bikes, the whole kit and caboodle. So a little bit more space would be nice. C, as Tom mentioned, that's another real thoroughfare, including especially for bikes, getting onto the mountain bike. And it's a raised section that someone could fall off.
I think we should lower it too, honestly.
So fine, I'm fine by lowering it, but also widening it, I think would be advantageous.
Thank you, Jan. Alice?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with widening C and lowering it, that makes sense to me. I'm reluctant to widen BXWT, like I see your point. I would probably be more comfortable with like just doing W or adding limbs along the way, but 1.5 is reasonable. I really wouldn't want 1.8. 1.5 is more.
Yes.
So Well, that's good.
So there is an option in the procedure bylaw when you have a motion that's put forward that has multiple components in it. If it's the will of a committee member, if they want to, they can request that the motion be split. So that would mean that you vote on each of those individual sections independently. So if somebody wanted to do that, they could.
I'll split it.
Can he split his own?
Yeah, you can't split your. You're not really splitting your motion, but somebody else is.
I'm not trying to be all.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Beth?
I'll try again. Okay, I'd like to make an amendment that section C be separated from.
So the easiest way to do it, Beth, is
Yeah.
just to move to split the motion.
Okay.
And then we'll vote on each section.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll move to split the motion.
And I'm sorry, you can split it however you want to. I shouldn't have led you like that.
Yeah,
You can request to split the motion into each individual section. You can just split out section C. You can request to split it however you want.
yeah. Well, definitely want section C because I see that as like, that makes sense to me. How do I do the rest? Because I don't
Beth-
see putting them all at one, like they're not all the same.
And we can do C right now, and then somebody else do another motion to further split, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
so we
I-
just
I-
want you to see, we can do that.
See,
Okay, I make a motion to split C off the Jan's motion.
Okay, so with that, we're just going to focus on section C for now, and then we'll come back to the other ones.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question of Jan?
Yep.
So the intention of the overall motion there, Jan, was that those sections that are not voted on are the intent is just simply to remain the way they are right now.
Well, when you have a split motion, you're instead of voting on everything in an encompassing vote, you're splitting it out into multiple motions. So we will come back and we will vote on those other sections too. It's a way that if you support widening section C, but you don't support widening section BB, you can have your cake and eat it too, basically. You don't have to swallow widening sections you don't want to widen because there is one that you do want to widen. Does that make sense? So we are coming back to those other sections, but we'll just focus on C first. That makes sense, Doug?
Sure. Yes.
Alice?
so can I make a friendly amendment that C also include lowering? That we recommend. C gets widened to 1.5 and lowered.
Yeah, you have to ask Jan, it's his
So that
motion.
would be friendly.
You
Sure,
okay
I
with-
see Chad saying nodding yes, so yeah. So going at the end is just.
So Jan's okay with that, Trevor, so you can add and lowering section C. Yeah.
Yeah, you should have skipped this week, not last week.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Now we're getting my ideas, man.
Okay, comments or questions about widening and lowering section C? Yep, Beth, go ahead.
It just makes sense to me. It is a main arterial connection. And it's, yeah.
Anyone else?
I feel Jan has found a sneaky way to get section C ahead on the priority list, but I still think it's a good idea too.
Trevor?
Just curious if anyone knows why it was built so high. It rocking.
Not sure, not sure.
Just a
Tom?
quick aside, status wise, I see it. You can see that it's been used fairly well, so that's part of the reason I'm advocating that part. It gets heavy enough use that, and if we are going to replace it, might not be a bit wider. It's my reasoning.
Anyone else? Alice?
I'm also really not worried about vegetation growing area, just grows.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing no one, we will call to question. Trevor, if you could read it back though, please.
So the motion is for C to be widened to 1.5 meters and lowered.
Committee, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously.
We did one.
Yay!
Alrighty, so now we will go back to the other one, or to the rest of the split. I just want to make sure I have those sections correct. That's BB, BB, X, W, and T, correct?
Yeah, am I allowed to speak to that?
Absolutely.
I hear people mumbling about doing certain sections of those four. Again, I'm just gonna put it out there, that stretch is probably the most used stretch of the entire boardwalk. And again, it's carriages, it's dogs, it's bikes. I'm saying I could easily be shut up in terms of widening any other stuff. This is all I'm asking for. And I think the arguments are pretty sound.
Okay, thanks, Jan. Committee comments, questions, discussion, debate? Tom?
Yes, besides the carriages and the strollers or bikes, whatever. We have people with educational opportunities, wide section gives a certain perspective that may allow that to happen more easily. And now, the question in my case is, the partial pullouts, I mean, is that an option? Is that something where we could look at the feasibility of both and see if there's some way to accommodate that? I don't know if that's within the scope of the motion.
The one opportunity that I do see for that would be, for example, if you look at where W meets T and U, as well as where W meets X and V, and where CC, or pardon me, BB meets Y and X, is we could do triangles. Platforms at those intersections that would provide 3 sides for the children to get down and experience nature. However, that doesn't accomplish the needs of everybody else with their carriages and their whatever, right? So that would be like a happy medium. It's not up to me. Awesome.
Yeah, and actually.
Alice, did I see you?
I think I'm just moving my hand a lot.
Okay. All right, anyone else? Al?
I'll try and just, like, that's an interesting idea, that these sections aren't really that long. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add there, rather than just widening the whole thing or putting in triangle. It's like, what my point is, that not that long, if you're on a triangle platform, you can wait, that's the point, for somebody to come. And that's the point, like, I was out there today and there was this guy going on talking, they were totally urban city people. And though they hadn't slowed down, they were just walking on there, and we were even on the wide part of CC. And we say hi, and they're going on about Elk Island or whatever park, whatever they were, it's like, no. I don't know if he would eventually see something that would make him stop, but that's the whole point of the Beaver Boardwalk. And he was still in his urban mold going, right? So anyway, my point is here, like speaking to Jan, widen the whole thing versus the 3 corners. It's not that long to wait for people to go, especially if you widen those corners.
Alice?
W bothers me, like, it's so close to the Beavers, and I'm worried about, like, you're talking about a lot more, like, you're increasing the capacity of how many people you can have there, right? Like, you could end up
People are still
really,
gonna do that.
Yeah, sorry, no back and forth,
you're
please.
gonna end up with, like, I don't know, I would really be concerned, like, that you're increasing the capacity for whole bunch of people to stand on WW where there's Beaver activity going on, like that. Yeah, that's the one part that I would want to probably keep it the current width, the rest I can.
Interesting, yeah.
Trevor? Tom?
Could you elaborate on how big of the cut corners you're talking? Like, are you talking like a meter by a meter or?
I'm not sure, like, that was Heather's comment, so, and I haven't really figured, like, you don't want it too massive either. It's not like you're making another classroom.
Yeah, that's what I wasn't sure if are you talking about like a mini plaza or just a safety cut corner?
Just a safer corner, not anything huge. So I guess the other option is. If we just widen BB and X, is that what you see? T.
Good, Trevor?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, go. Tom?
I guess too, looking forward to things that may happen. If you replace the tower, does that obviate the need to widen, or does it actually make it, I guess it's speculative, because then do people for educational opportunities just go to the tower? Or we still have traffic issues, so do you still have to widen? Or do you have to pick one over the other? That's kind of where I'm at.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah,
One could argue that it would increase. If you bring people to the tower, how are they getting to the tower? They're using that route. And again, I'm just trying to get people safely by each other. I don't think adding that much length into the is going to affect the ecosystem that much. And I don't see how it's going to increase numbers of people to that section. I don't think people are going to be, I want to go now because that section is wider. It's just going to make the passing easier. That's it. That's all I'm looking for. That's the busiest area of the whole thing.
so, Doug?
Oh, I would just like to vote on the sections that have already been raised by Jan, just to keep it moving.
So you're asking to call the question then?
Sure, if that's what it's called, yeah.
Yep, you betcha. Okay, if there's nothing further, we're gonna call the proposed motion to question. Alice, go ahead.
Can I split W off?
Yep, so Alice is moving to split section W. So that leaves BB,
Doesn't make sense.
BB, X, and T.
Yeah.
I mean, at least there, like, once you and V are back with 2 ways to go. I
So do you want to
Yeah,
make that
it's-
motion or no?
Sure, why not?
Okay,
Worst case scenario, they will vote yes.
okay, so, okay, well, we gotta go. Okay. We will consider section W on its own now. Okay, comments or questions regarding section W only? Committee,
For me,
Beth, go ahead.
once U and V are put in place, then I think a lot of the classroom, but the learning, like they'll drag a lot of the students down there, like that'll give another opportunity for them to go and do their thing, right? Yeah, so. Yeah, this idea with these classes, I don't know, corners, I don't know if that's needed. But yeah, but basically, V and U would take some of the traffic off of that kind of traffic off of W.
Jan and then Doug.
I'll be voting against it because even with the U and V, there's still a major part of the population that just wants to get from all of this trail network on the south side over to town, and they're going through there,
So
and they're not going to be doing the UV.
your motion's still the same. Your motion is still to widen it to 1.5.
But her motion is
No,
to,
her motion was just to split it, to consider W separately from BB.
Oh,
And yeah, so the motion is still to widen to 1.5. We're just gonna consider W by itself, that's all.
Just like we did with C.
Make sense? I want to make sure the committee's clear on that. We're not voting to keep it the same. The motion is still to widen section W to 1.5.
perfect, thank you for clarifying.
Doug?
Just calling to question the motion to widen W to 1.5.
Okay, I have a request to call it to question. If there's nothing imminently pressing, we will call the question. Seeing nothing, all those in favor of widening section W to 1.5 meters? All those in favor? Opposed? And that was carried 4-2. We'll go back now. Now we are considering DB, X, and T. Okay, comments, questions, discussion, debate?
Yeah, I know. Like, I'll make a comment. Are we,
Yep,
like,
go ahead,
I'm not
Val.
sure about these corner things, like, rather than additional. Like the pullouts, like, there's a few pullouts. Well, would the pullouts satisfy your traffic needs, you know?
So I answer.
Yeah,
That's okay. I'll let it slide.
yeah. Well, this is garbage. The whole thing is garbage, but we have to do that.
That's the attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna have to speak against that.
Yeah.
Please
I'm
try
sorry,
not to make
I
denigrating
apologize.
comments. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on, sorry, go ahead, Doug.
I'll just call into question widening of BB, X, and T.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Unless there's anything extremely pressing, we'll call the question. Seeing nothing, we'll call to question the motion to widen sections BB, X, and T to 1.5 meters. All those in favor? Opposed? And that was carried 6-1. Jan,
I'd like to ask a question about time.
go ahead.
We are over time. What is our plan?
Hey, committee, you want to stay for a while?
So you guys have the option to do, they need a motion to extend now, so past our terms of reference time.
Okay.
Yeah, so you guys will need a motion to extend once we get to 8, I think. Alternatively, we could use the last 10 minutes to pick another meeting time in like next week. I'm on vacation, but I'll come in for this meeting. Because we have to get this done if I'm gonna hit those timelines.
I'd like to speak to it. I'd like to call a meeting for next week. I'm starving and tired. And I also think that tonight, especially the past half hour, we've learned a lot about what the process is going to be like. So now we can all go away and gather up our ideas for motions.
Yeah, that was gonna be my recommendation while I went for a walk. That's great. Thanks, Jan.
Yeah, and that will make that meeting go a lot faster.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Just one request that I have of everyone. My dad's coming to visit.
Bring them along.
I mean, he would. That's the thing. I'm so sorry, everyone. So I would just request that Monday or Tuesday we can hold the meeting. That would allow me to be here. Otherwise, I can give everything to Chad and to Albert. But that's the time frame I have.
I think the committee would likely prefer that you're here, but
You're just trying to get out of extra work.
no, I'm
Just
not.
kidding.
I see value in your presence.
Oh, thank you, sir.
You know,
I value presence as well, and I'm kind of betting that Albert might be busy on Tuesday. I'm not sure.
yeah,
Oh,
Tuesday's
yeah.
not great.
I would go for Monday for sure myself. Just putting that out there. Tuesday wouldn't be great for me. I might be.
Tuesday might probably be okay. It's just, yeah, it's really short. There's only one agenda item, so. Tuesday could work as long as it was like 6 maybe.
Is Monday out of the question for people?
Monday's good for me.
I can do it.
Monday works. I would ask it to be a little bit later.
Sure.
But-
Yeah.
But Monday works if it's a bit later for me.
6 o'clock, is that late enough?
6:30.
That's fine
I'm
by
literally
me.
not doing anything. So whatever time you guys decide.
Yeah, 6:30 then.
Doug,
Doug, how about you?
Oh, it doesn't matter to me. I'm at work. I'll be remote. I can hit both dates.
Oh, geez.
Oh, poor Doug. You feel so bad.
I've never seen
Sounds like
you
you
in person, Doug.
I will be at the Wild Mountain Music Festival this weekend though, so I will be there
Nice.
Oh, cool. Well, maybe I might see you there.
In person.
Okay, in person.
in person.
But you're good at Monday at 6:30 to join via Zoom?
Sure thing, yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe Kevin can too then.
yeah,
Yeah. I'll do it.
Just to clarify, that's Monday the 18th.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm making sure.
Where?
Just a comment, I like Jan's comment about we've all learned about the process, because this is a lot to absorb in terms of changes, and like now we kind of know what's expected of us, so we can go away and consider all the issues kind of better to address each one of these topics.
Okay, so we will schedule a meeting for Monday at 6:30. Now, committee, I do have a question though. So that's 3.5. Do we want to just postpone everything that's on the agenda to Monday, everything that's left? Or do we want to try and get some of the other things out of the way?
I'm done.
We're done, I think.
Okay, if it's okay with the committee, I would like to address 3.6 vote recording, because it should be really quick.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So the reason it's going to be really quick, as you guys all know, we're governed by council procedure bylaw. And council procedure bylaw actually addresses vote recording. And it was being recorded correctly earlier. We were recording the vote numbers with names. That's how it's supposed to be. 20.4, voting on motions. The recording secretary shall record the names of those who vote for and those who vote against a motion in the minutes. So we can discuss it further. Sorry, Emily?
No, go ahead first.
We can discuss it further if you want, but it is kind of governed in the procedure bylaws. So, Alice?
This is, I guess, aside, but does that mean council's gonna start recording the names as well?
We do.
Okay, because they weren't there was a period where they stopped, but it's come
Yeah,
back.
that was inadvertent.
Okay,
Yes, I'm
understood.
not gonna get into why, but yeah, that was. yeah,
Good
no,
to know.
no,
I was gonna write an email, and I don't have.
no, they are being recorded now and they were supposed to have been recorded.
Okay, so I just wanted to point out that likely, Beth, the reason that that wasn't shown was because if you recall, Trevor wasn't here and I didn't give that direction to Doug. I totally
Oh.
forgot, so that's my bad. And Trevor apparently read the whole procedure bylaw. Thank you, sir. Just saying.
No.
All right, so they will, the future minutes will be reflected as Trevor has been.
So we don't even need to vote.
No.
Great.
Okay, so if that's it, we're going to postpone the other items on the agenda to our Monday meeting, and I don't need to vote on that. Do we? We need we do need a motion to postpone to a meeting on Monday.
That makes
was
a motion that we postpone the rest of the agenda to Monday, the 17th. 18th of July at 6:30. Meeting to be held at the same location.
After all that, Trevor? All right, committee, any comments or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, that is carried unanimously. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
One moves to adjourn. All those in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.